I can still feel the moment I pushed back from the kitchen table, heart hammering like it might crack open my chest. The plane tickets glowed on my laptop screen, casting a cool blue hue across my face in the stillness of the kitchen. Round trip to San Diego. 2 travelers, me and my 8-year-old son, Liam Harris. A single click of the mouse sounded louder than it should have. Final. Certain. It's done, Megan. 3 years of shadows, of pretending, of surviving, ended right there. 3 years ago, my husband, Andrew Harris, was pronounced dead in what they called a freak accident on a business trip. No body. Just a brief, vague report and a death certificate handed over like a transaction, the woman at the desk delivering the news with a kind of polished sorrow that made me sick. I still remember the day, etched like a wound that never quite healed. Standing in this same kitchen, clutching Liam to my chest as one of Andrew's coworkers, voice trembling, whispered, "He's gone." "I'm so sorry." I crumbled to the floor, the world cracking open and swallowing everything I knew. From that moment on, I lived like a shadow of myself. I had loved Andrew deeply, too deeply, enough to excuse the endless business trips, the midnight phone calls, the emotional distance creeping into his voice. I told myself he was tired. Stressed. That things would settle. Instead, he vanished. No goodbye. No explanation. Just, gone. Or at least, that's what I believed. Since then, I made a silent promise to live for Liam. I pawned my wedding ring to cover part of the mortgage. Took a full-time job at the local bank and refused to let exhaustion win. Every spare moment went into making sure my son didn't fall into the same silence I did. He didn't ask about his dad often, but when he did, the ache was unbearable. Each question like a small blade, twisting deeper. Buying those tickets today wasn't just booking a trip. It was claiming something, hope, maybe. A chance to breathe. To begin again. To show Liam that life isn't just built around loss. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let out the breath I'd been holding for far too long. Liam burst in from the living room, his grin stretching wide as soon as he heard we were heading for the beach. He threw his arms around me and whispered, "You'll be happier there, right, Mom?" I didn't know how to answer. Maybe I would be. Maybe not. But I knew this much, it was a step forward. The first in a long time. There was a time when my life felt pulled straight from the pages of a magazine. Andrew wasn't just good-looking, he had that magnetic presence that made people lean in closer. He was sharp, charming, the kind of man who made you feel like the only one in the room. I met him at 25, still learning who I was, a junior loan officer barely making ends meet. He walked in, confident like he'd done it 100 times, asking all the right questions about mortgages even though it felt like he already knew the answers. By the end of that appointment, I was hooked. And he knew it. We were married a year later. For a while, we had the kind of marriage people envy, weekend hikes in the Rockies, wine under the stars, impromptu road trips just because. He'd switched to financial brokerage, and success came fast. At company parties, I felt proud, his arm slung over my shoulder, like we were solid. Untouchable. Then Liam arrived. Our miracle. My sweet, sensitive boy. I thought Andrew would slow down. That he'd swap conference calls for bedtime stories. That family dinners would matter more than client meetings. Instead, he disappeared into his career even more. Traveling constantly, sealing deals in places I couldn't even find on a map. There were months Liam only saw his father in passing, a kiss at dawn, a door closing at midnight. I tried talking to him. First gently, then pleading. "You're missing his childhood," I whispered one night, standing in this very kitchen, tears pooling but refusing to fall. He pulled me close, kissed my hair, and murmured, "It's just for now. I'm building something for us. For our future." And I wanted to believe him. God, I really did. Until the day he didn't come home. At first, I assumed it was another unannounced trip. Then his phone went straight to voicemail. For 3 days, I told Liam, Daddy's just busy, sweetheart. He'll be home soon. Even as dread coiled in my stomach like something alive. On day 4, the call came. A snowmobile accident. Thin ice. A remote river in Idaho. Swept away by the current. No body recovered. I remember holding the phone, listening to the words that didn't make sense, and sinking to the floor, the receiver still clutched in my hand. Liam looked up at me, confused, eyes wide and brown like his father's. He didn't understand why I couldn't speak. I thought about every missed birthday. Every quiet dinner. Every time I reached for a man already halfway gone. And I hated myself for still loving him even then. They issued the death certificate a week later, a clean, official document that shut the door on our story. There was no funeral. No body to lay to rest. Just an empty urn and 100 unanswered questions. And in that emptiness, I built a fortress around my heart. So tall, even Liam felt its shadow. Mommy, how come you don't smile anymore? He asked softly one night. I smiled anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? For 3 years, I told myself I was moving forward, holding it together. I thought I was healing. Thought I was strong. But grief isn't something you just wash off. It's sticky, like it sinks into your skin and won't come out, no matter how hard you scrub. That's why San Diego wasn't just a vacation. It was a breath. A moment to exhale. A chance to feel something other than survival, even if only for a week. I had no idea how quickly the walls I'd carefully built were about to give way. 3 years had changed so much. And yet somehow, nothing at all. I'd gotten used to mornings without Andrew's voice drifting in from the kitchen. I learned how to unclog drains, pay bills on time, and cheer from the sidelines at every one of Liam's soccer matches, just me in the stands. I became the woman who smiled when people said, "You're doing amazing," even when I wasn't. The one who dodged sympathy at work, who filled her days with noise to drown out everything else. Denver got quieter over those 3 years. Our social circle slowly faded, not out of malice, just life moving on without us. Mine felt like it was stuck in place. Winter refusing to turn into spring. I buried myself in my job at the bank, structured my life to avoid the sharp corners of emotion, and clung to Liam like he was the only solid thing left. He became my anchor. My reason for every little thing. On the days I didn't want to move, I'd whisper to myself. He needs breakfast. He needs a ride to school. He needs a mom who keeps showing up. And Liam grew, faster than I was ready for. One moment I was teaching him to tie his shoes, and the next he was rattling off which superhero movies we absolutely had to see. Lately, the questions about his dad had started again. Quiet ones, murmured into the dark when he thought I wasn't really listening. Do you think Daddy can see me, Mom? Or, when I'm grown up, will I still remember what he looked like? I gave him answers, the best I could. But every word felt like I was softening the edges of Andrew's memory. Filling in blanks with gentle lies about a man who worked a lot but loved us very much. The truth? I never really faced it. I shelved my grief, tucked it away like a book I couldn't bear to open. But there's only so long before the shelf starts to buckle under the weight. One night, after tucking Liam into bed, I found myself scrolling through vacation websites. I hadn't left Colorado since before Andrew died. It felt wrong. Like a betrayal. But then I looked at Liam's door, closed and quiet, and thought. He deserves joy, too. And that's how it happened, 2 plane tickets to San Diego, 1 room near the beach, and a week marked off on my work calendar. It felt impulsive. Reckless. But also like something I hadn't felt in ages, free. When I told Liam, his jaw dropped. The beach? For real, he shouted, bouncing on the couch. He hugged me so tight I could barely catch my breath and whispered, "You'll smile more there, right, Mom?" That question stuck in my chest like a pebble in my throat. I kissed his forehead and said, "I'll try, baby. I'll really try." Later that night, I stood at the window, staring out at the city lights. Life looked so different than I'd ever imagined. There was a time when Andrew and I dreamed about international getaways, champagne on balconies, postcards from Italy. Now just booking a trip to California felt like scaling a mountain. But as I packed sunscreen and Liam's favorite swim trunks, I felt something I hadn't allowed in a long time. Hope. Maybe this could be a beginning. I didn't yet know how right, and how terribly wrong, I would be. The morning of our flight, Liam buzzed around the house like it was Christmas morning. He dragged his little suitcase behind him, wheels rattling across the floor, shouting, "San Diego, here we come." His energy was electric. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something warm spark in me. Excitement. A flutter I thought I'd buried with Andrew's death certificate. The airport was the usual kind of chaos. Overpriced coffee, long security lines, the low murmur of people rushing towards somewhere else. Liam held my hand the whole way, his grip bouncing between excited and nervous. We boarded the plane and found our seats. He pressed his face against the window, eyes wide. "We're really doing this, Mom," he whispered. "We're really going." The plane was full, but calm. Passengers settled in with headphones and paperbacks. I tried to relax, reminding myself this trip was about healing. Letting go. Making new memories. Then I noticed Liam staring down the aisle. His brows pinched, his face puzzled. "Mom," he whispered, tugging on my arm. "Is that Dad?" My entire body froze. I turned my head, slow as stone, afraid to see, afraid not to. 2 rows ahead, a man sat turned slightly toward a blonde woman beside him. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed most of his face and dark sunglasses. But there was something in the way he moved, his posture, the way his fingers gestured while he spoke. Familiar. Too familiar. I laughed nervously. "Sweetheart, no. You're just imagining it." But then he shifted, and my blood turned cold. A scar. Just beneath his jawline. Small, faint. One I had kissed 100 times. In another life. Liam whispered again, firmer this time. "Mom. I'm serious. That's him." I couldn't breathe. For 3 years, I'd told myself Andrew was gone. That there was nothing left to hope for. But here, on a random flight to San Diego, sat a man who looked exactly like my dead husband, alive, laughing, with another woman. I tightened my grip on Liam's hand. "It's probably just someone who looks like him," I whispered. "Lots of people look alike." But my voice shook, and Liam noticed. I turned toward the window, trying to steady my breath, but I couldn't stop glancing back. Every tiny gesture, the tap of his fingers on the armrest, the slight tilt of his head as he listened, was exactly how Andrew used to be. I told myself I was imagining it. That grief was making ghosts. But somewhere, deep inside, a voice I hadn't heard in years began to whisper. What if it's really him? I sat frozen the rest of the flight, my mind racing, grief, confusion, fury, and something far more dangerous. Hope. When we landed and the seatbelt sign clicked off, passengers started collecting their bags. But I didn't move. I held Liam's backpack tightly in my lap, watching the man out of the corner of my eye. I couldn't look straight at him. Because if I saw his face clearly, I might never be able to unsee it. But Liam wasn't done. As the man passed us down the aisle, Liam leaned in close and whispered. "Mom, he looked right at you." And he smiled. And just like that, everything tilted off its axis. San Diego welcomed us with golden light and the scent of the ocean in the air, a sharp contrast to Denver's dry, brittle cold. Liam was still riding the high of the flight, jabbering about how the coastline looked from above, how giant the waves must be, how he planned to build the tallest sandcastle ever constructed. I smiled, trying to keep my focus on him, on the present. But my mind kept looping back to the man on the plane. I kept telling myself it meant nothing. Just a strange coincidence. People resemble each other all the time. But the scar. The way he leaned on the seat back. The shape of his hands, even the angle of his shoulders. And Liam, kids don't usually make those kinds of mistakes. Not with that level of conviction in their voice. By the time we checked in at the hotel, I had almost convinced myself to drop it. This trip wasn't meant for digging into old shadows. It was for breathing again. Our room had a balcony with a full view of the ocean, and when Liam saw it, he gasped like he'd struck gold. He spent the whole evening running between the window and the television, talking nonstop about seashells and sharks and dolphins. For a little while, I felt normal again. Like maybe things could be okay. That night, after he drifted into sleep, I stepped out onto the balcony and let the sea air wrap around me. It was quiet. Still. Peaceful. Until voices from the balcony below drifted up. At first, it sounded like a typical couple's argument, tense, tired. But then I froze. That voice. Do you even care about anything besides money? A man snapped. Every word sharp, frustration bleeding through. My stomach sank. My hands gripped the balcony railing until they hurt. That tone, that rhythm of speech, I knew it. I didn't even need the full sentence. Just the way he hit his syllables when he was angry. It was unmistakable. Then a woman replied, her voice young and biting. Don't start with me, Andrew. I told you what I wanted from day one. Andrew. My knees nearly buckled. I had to brace myself against the sliding door. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. I crouched just enough to glance over the edge without being seen. There he was. Same frame. Same hands. Same agitated hand gestures. No sunglasses now. No hat to obscure him. Just Andrew, alive and standing one floor beneath me, arguing with a woman who wasn't me. My first instinct was to storm downstairs and demand an explanation. Scream every question I'd swallowed for 3 years. But my body wouldn't move. I just stood there, trembling, listening to pieces of their fight drift up through the night air. You think dragging me to a cheap hotel in San Diego makes up for everything? She yelled. It's a 4-star hotel, Chloe, he snapped. Chloe. So that was her name. I backed away, one hand over my mouth, my heart ripping apart all over again, not because I had lost him. But because I had found him, alive, living a life I was never meant to know existed. When I finally stepped back inside, Liam stirred in his sleep and mumbled, Mom? I dropped to my knees beside him, brushing the hair from his forehead. Shoo, baby. It's okay. Go back to sleep. He let out a soft sigh and rolled over, completely unaware that the world he knew had just turned upside down. Mine had, too. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, staring into nothing, a single thought echoing again and again. He's alive. Andrew is alive. And I had no idea what to do with that. The next morning, I woke up hoping it had been some cruel hallucination. That grief and exhaustion had twisted my mind. But the balcony below me was still there. Still occupied. Still too real. Andrew Harris, my husband, declared dead 3 years ago, was breathing and living one floor beneath me, alongside a woman named Chloe. I drifted through the day in a daze. I put on my best smile as Liam dragged me along the shore, collecting shells and giggling when the cold surf hit his ankles. But every breath felt tight. Like I was wearing a life that no longer fit. I told myself this trip was for Liam. That I'd keep it together, for him. But when the sun went down and Liam slipped into sleep, the weight of it became too much. I pulled my hair into a knot, threw on dark sunglasses, and headed down to the hotel bar. It was dimly lit, cozy, soft amber lights, the murmur of low conversation, and a jazz trio playing quietly in the corner. And there he was. Sitting alone at the bar. A drink in his hand. Looking older, more tired, but undeniably. Andrew. He didn't see me. He was lost in his thoughts, staring into his glass like it held secrets he couldn't unlock. I didn't plan to approach. But my legs carried me forward before my mind could stop them. I slid onto a stool, 2 seats away, and said casually, "Rough night?" He glanced up, a little startled, then offered a faint, worn-out smile. "You could say that," he replied. That voice. God. That voice hit me like a wave I wasn't ready for. I kept my tone light, like I was just another tourist making small talk. "Want to talk about it?" He let out a humorless chuckle. "Girlfriend drama. You know how it goes." I forced a laugh. Even as nausea twisted in my stomach. Girlfriend drama. This man had vanished from our lives. Had let us mourn him, bury him, grieve him. And now he was here, bickering about hotel ratings with someone new. He took a sip of his drink, eyes still focused on the amber liquid. "She just doesn't understand me," he said, voice low. "None of them ever really do. She thinks I'm just some washed-up guy clinging to his youth," he muttered. "Maybe she's not wrong." He glanced at me then, eyes narrowing slightly like he was trying to place where he'd seen me before. I dropped my gaze to my drink and kept still. "What do you wish she saw instead?" I asked, my voice barely above the hum of the bar. He gave a dry, humorless laugh. "That I'm more than a paycheck. That I've been through hell, and I'm still standing. That I'm trying to fix what's broken. But nobody sees the whole story." He paused, rubbed the back of his neck, then shook his head like he was brushing the moment off. "Forget it. You didn't come here to hear me whine." "I'm a good listener," I said softly, heart pounding so hard I thought it might echo in the glass. Hell and back, he had no idea. He let out a slow breath, rubbing his temple. 3 years ago, I lost everything. Thought I'd hit bottom. Had to start over. Cut ties. Leave people behind. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My fingers tightened around my glass until I feared it might crack. Leave people behind. That's what he called it. He hadn't just left, he'd vanished. Let us grieve him, bury the past, move on in pieces. And now, this? He called it disappearing. I wanted to scream. To tell him exactly who I was. To drag him up the stairs and show him his sleeping son, the child who'd been told his father was gone forever. But I didn't. I stayed silent, nodding like a stranger, while the ground shifted beneath me. Andrew downed the last of his drink and rose to leave. He gave me a small nod. "Thanks for listening. You're easier to talk to than most people I know." I forced a smile. "Anytime." And then he walked away, leaving me sitting there, fists clenched in my lap, shaking, not just with rage but something worse, relief. Relief that he was real. That I wasn't going crazy. That the face and the voice were not ghosts after all. But now I had to confront something far scarier than the past. What the hell was I going to do about it? The next day should have felt like a dream. The sky was perfect, the heat soft instead of blistering, and the breeze brought in the salty scent of possibility. Liam was knee-deep in his latest creation, a sand fortress he proudly declared was earthquake-proof. I sat on a striped beach towel a few feet away, sipping water, letting the sun warm my skin, letting myself pretend, just for a little while, that Andrew wasn't here. But the illusion broke fast. A voice cut through the lazy hum of waves and chatter, high, sharp, panicked. I turned instinctively, scanning the beach until I saw her, Chloe. She was crouched beside a motionless figure sprawled in the sand. My blood went cold. It was him. Andrew lay on his side, his skin ashen, one arm bent awkwardly beneath him. Chloe was frantic, shouting his name, shaking his shoulder with rising desperation. For a single breath, I stayed frozen. I could have kept sitting. He wasn't my problem anymore, right? But then I saw Liam, shovel in hand, staring in horror. "Mom, is that?" "Stay here, sweetheart," I said, already running. By the time I reached Andrew, his chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. His pulse was weak, but it was there. Muscle memory kicked in. Years ago, I took a CPR course for work. Never thought I'd use it on him. I gently rolled him onto his back and cleared his airway. "He's breathing," I murmured, more to myself than to Chloe, who was now crying openly. "Heat exhaustion. Maybe dehydration." I shaded his face with my towel and looked up. "Go find someone from the hotel or call for help. Now." Chloe nodded and took off running. And there I was, on my knees in the sand beside the man who broke me. Who left me. Who I buried. And still. My first instinct had been to save him. Andrew stirred, eyelids fluttering, and a hoarse sound escaped his lips. "Megan." I froze. He recognized me. "Yes," I said, barely able to get the word out. "It's me." His eyes found mine, confusion turning to disbelief. You're really here?" "Just like you," I whispered, my voice sharp with grief and fury I hadn't expected. Chloe returned with a hotel staff member and a first aid kit. The man dropped beside us, checking vitals and asking questions I barely heard. I stood back, wiping sand from my hands and trying to get my heart under control. The staff helped Andrew sit up, pressed a bottle of water into his hands, urged him to rest in the shade. Chloe hovered like a hawk, her eyes darting toward me with suspicion. I was a stranger to her, and in a way, I was. But Andrew's eyes never left mine. "Megan," he said, voice rough. "Please. We need to talk." I brushed sand from my legs, my expression unreadable. "Not here." He nodded quickly, almost desperate. "Tonight?" 10 o'clock. "Hotel bar," I replied. And then I turned and walked back to Liam, who had abandoned his sandcastle and was watching with furrowed brows. "Mom," he whispered. Is that really Dad?" I dropped to a crouch and hugged him tight. "We'll talk soon, okay? But for now, let's head inside." As we walked toward the hotel, the weight of what was coming settled heavily on my shoulders. Tonight, I'd finally hear the truth. And I wasn't sure what scared me more. That he might have a reason. Or that he might not. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I clutched a glass of water, trying to calm my breath, steady my thoughts. At exactly 10 o'clock, Andrew walked in. No disguise. No sunglasses. No baseball cap pulled low. Just him, exposed. He looked older now. There were deeper lines around his eyes, a touch of silver in his hair. But he was unmistakably Andrew Harris. My husband. My dead husband. He approached slowly, cautiously, like he wasn't sure if I was going to run or slap him. I hadn't decided which yet. "Megan," he said quietly, like the word itself was sacred. I didn't respond. I stared. Waiting. Finally, I said, "You have 2 minutes to explain why I buried an empty urn and raised our son alone for 3 years. He flinched. Rubbed his hands together like he was trying to scrub something off his skin. "I never wanted it to happen that way," he murmured. "I had to vanish. I didn't have another option." "No option but to fake your death?" I said, voice sharp and cracking despite my best efforts. "No option but to make me tell our 5-year-old his father was never coming home?" His jaw tightened. "I was in serious trouble, Megan. Remember that startup deal? It wasn't just business. I borrowed money, from dangerous people. People who don't make threats lightly." I stared at him, stunned. Part of me wanted to laugh, the rest wanted to scream. "So instead of coming to me, you staged your death? Let me believe you were gone because what, that was easier than telling the truth." "It wasn't easier," he said quickly, desperate. "It broke me. But I thought if I stayed, you and Liam would be in danger. So I cut all ties. Changed everything. I've spent the last 3 years rebuilding, repaying every cent, trying to create a life where no one could touch you again. My eyes burned. I blinked fast, refusing to let the tears fall. And Chloe? I asked, my voice like ice. Is she part of this new safe life, too? He hesitated. Then nodded. I met her later. She doesn't know anything about before. I leaned back, folding my arms. You let me mourn you. You let Liam grow up thinking his dad was dead, while you were off sipping cocktails in paradise with someone who doesn't even know who you really are. He looked down, guilt pouring off him in waves. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he whispered. But I needed to see you. And Liam. Just once. I had to know if I had even the smallest chance to make this right. That's when the tears came. Not for him. For me. For all the nights I cried myself to sleep. For the grief I had clawed my way through. For raising a child alone while the man I loved built a different life. You don't get to decide when you come back, I said, voice low. You don't get to walk in here and expect everything to just go back to the way it was. He reached for me. I pulled away. Megan, please. Let me be his father again. Let me talk to him. I'm begging you. I stood slowly, pushing my chair back with a scrape. Tomorrow. 11 a.m. Hotel Cafe. You can see him. After that, we'll see. Then I walked out. My legs felt like they might give out, but my back was straight. I had finally heard the truth, but it didn't feel like peace. It felt like the start of a storm I wasn't sure I could survive. The next morning, I woke before the alarm, staring up at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made the wrong choice. Letting Andrew see Liam felt like opening a door I'd sealed shut with steel. What if this just hurt him more? Liam, though, was all smiles, bouncing around the room like it was any other morning. Do they have pancakes, Mom? Please say they have pancakes, he said, wrestling with his sneakers. I forced a smile. They have pancakes, sweetie. Don't worry. By the time we reached the cafe, Andrew was already there, corner table, tapping his fingers nervously. Liam spotted him, stopped in his tracks. His brow furrowed, eyes narrowing like he was trying to solve a riddle that didn't make sense. Mom, he whispered. That's him. That's really him, isn't it? I nodded. Yes, baby. That's your dad. Liam didn't run into his arms like a movie scene. He walked slowly, measured, until he stood across from Andrew and just looked at him. Andrew's eyes were wet as he dropped to one knee. Hi, buddy, he said, voice thick. It's me. It's Dad. Liam's lip trembled. But you were gone. Mom said. He couldn't finish. The words stuck in his throat. Andrew's face crumpled. I know. And I'm so sorry. I made a terrible decision. I thought I was protecting you and your mom. But I hurt you instead. Silence. Then, slowly, Liam stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Andrew's neck. Andrew held him tightly, like he might never let go. His shoulders shook. I turned away, blinking fast. Whatever I felt about Andrew, Liam had just reclaimed a part of his heart. They sat together. Andrew ordered pancakes and orange juice for Liam, coffee for himself. The start of their conversation was clumsy, cautious. Liam asked where Andrew had been, what he'd been doing. Andrew gave broad, truthful enough answers about travel and fixing problems. I let him handle it. Didn't correct him. Didn't interrupt. Then Liam leaned close and whispered, Did you miss me? Andrew's eyes welled again. More than anything. That was it. Liam beamed. He launched into stories about school, soccer, the sandcastle he built yesterday. Andrew hung on every word, like each one was treasure. After breakfast, Liam tugged Andrew's hand. Can you come to the beach with us today? Andrew looked at me, waiting. Asking. I hesitated. then nodded once. We walked down together. The three of us. For an hour, it felt like a life we might have had. They built a castle. Laughed when the tide knocked it over. I watched them from my towel, heart torn in two, grateful Liam had this moment, shattered by how many we'd missed. When it was time to leave, Liam hugged him again. Can we see you tomorrow too? Andrew looked to me. We'll see, buddy, I said gently. One step at a time. On the way back to the hotel, Liam bounced beside me. Maybe he can come home with us. Maybe we can be a family again. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That welded shut door was wide open now. And what came through it could change everything. That night, after Liam fell asleep, I sat on the balcony, staring out at the ocean. Wondering if I'd done the right thing. Wondering what came next. The waves rolled in smooth and steady, a stark contrast to the storm still raging inside me. Watching Andrew with Liam had healed something I didn't even know was still broken. But it also reopened a wound I'd buried deep, one I'd convinced myself was long gone. There was a soft knock on the balcony door. I turned. Andrew stood there, hesitant, waiting for permission. I gave a small nod, and he stepped outside, careful not to come too close, like he was afraid to cross some invisible line. He's incredible, Andrew said quietly. You've done an amazing job, Megan. I folded my arms, keeping my distance. I didn't have the luxury of doing anything else. You weren't here. He nodded slowly, guilt shadowing his face. I know. And I'm sorry. I can't undo the choices I made. But I want to be here for him now. Even if you can't forgive me, please, don't keep me out of his life. I studied him in the moonlight, searching for some trace of the man I once trusted. The one I married, not the man who vanished and let us believe he was gone forever. You can't just walk back into our lives and pretend we're picking up where we left off, I said, my voice firm. You staged your death, Andrew. You left me alone to explain to our son why his father would never come home. You don't get to erase that just because it hurts now. He lowered his gaze, shame written all over him. I'm not asking to be your husband again. I know I forfeited that. But I'm asking for a chance to be his father. I'll do it your way. I'll take it slow. I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. Just don't shut me out of his world. The only sound for a while was the rhythmic crash of the waves below. Part of me wanted to tell him to turn around and leave, disappear again and make it permanent this time. But then I saw Liam's smile from that morning flash through my mind. The way his arms wrapped around his dad like they belonged there. The laughter on the beach that hadn't touched his face in years. You can be part of his life, I said finally. But it's going to be on my terms. No surprise visits. You call first. You show up when you say you will. And if you ever lie to him again, about anything, this ends for good. A wave of relief washed over his face, his shoulders loosening. Thank you. I swear, Megan, I won't mess this up again. I turned toward the ocean, my voice calm and sure now. Good. Because I'm not the same woman you left behind. I built something without you. I'm proud of that. I don't need you, Andrew. And Liam doesn't need you to be perfect, he just needs you to be real with him. Andrew blinked fast, holding back tears. You're stronger than I remember. I had to be, I said softly. You made sure of that. He didn't try to say more. He just gave a small nod and slipped quietly back inside. I stayed there on the balcony, letting the salt air dry the tears I hadn't noticed falling. This wasn't the storybook ending Liam might have dreamed of, but it was honest. And honesty, at least, gave me something solid to stand on. Even if it was just Liam and me moving forward, with Andrew playing a small, carefully controlled part. Later that night, I tucked Liam in. As I turned to leave, he stirred, murmuring in his sleep. Mom, we're happy, right? I brushed the hair from his forehead and kissed it gently. Yes, baby. We're happy. And we're going to be okay. And for the first time in 3 years, I truly believed it.